Welcome to Our Girl Relationships. On this channel, we discuss day-to-day problems people face in their lives. Let's start with the video.
My parents have always been a bunch of sick and twisted, irresponsible people that couldn't care any less about their children or anything outside of building a seemingly perfect reputation for themselves. They've always been the people who drowned financially and still managed to starve their children, and ignored their responsibilities to put together and host them fancy parties. They've always been the people who drowned financially and still managed to starve their children and ignore their responsibilities to put together and host them fancy parties to which they would invite people who couldn't care any less about them. That's the way I've watched my parents treat me and my siblings all throughout my childhood. And quite honestly, I don't feel like there would be anything for me to change about that. Nor did I ever try to do that. I don't care what type of life they choose for themselves as long as it doesn't directly influence mine in the long run. And that's what I started to realize starting high school. I began to have my very own crisis about what I would be doing for a living and which profession I would undergo for the rest of my life, and therefore what university I would be applying for. And considering the fact that university application submissions are based off of the entirety of high school performance, the anxiety of adhering to a good level of grades and possibly having the ability to attend an actually decent university as accompanied by my awareness of my parents has bad spending habits. I knew for a fact that all the money the government usually gives out to parents, which they're supposed to save up for their children's college tuitions, would have been nothing but an opportunity for my parents to host even grander parties and get more compliments from an even larger audience. I'm not sure if it's because of their narcissism or their constant need for validation, but whatever their reasoning may be, it was directly jeopardizing my education and overall quality of life. My final year of high school had finally arrived, and I had lived and accepted the fact that my parents wouldn't have saved any money for me, and that I would be struggling to pay for my tuition. I applied for many colleges and got accepted to a number of really good universities, from which I ended up choosing and then apologizing for not being able to attend during the first year. My reasoning for that being that I won't be able to make the tuition fees worth of money in the summer leading up to start of the first semester, hence leaving me with the option that I should devote the following year to make the money necessary for me to study at least a couple of years without having to worry about paying each semester I got confirmation. At least a couple of years without having to worry about paying each semester. I got confirmation from universities that I should apply for an academic break the following year should I choose them, and ended up bringing up the topic to my parents over breakfast the following week or so. I told them that I would be staying home the following year and taking an academic break so I can make the money necessary for me, which I won't be able to during summer, to which they responded by becoming all awkward and flustered. When I noticed their change in behavior, I asked them what was going on, and they told me that they did indeed save the money for my tuition which the government had been giving them since I was born. I told them that I needed $90,000 or so for the entirety of my 5 years of education, to which they happily confirmed to me that my money would actually amount up to that. I was rushed by joy and consumed by surprise and hugged my parents for the first time in probably years. I did end up going to university the following year and didn't have to worry about which pencil I bought or which book I purchased instead of borrowing, and I was getting the full college experience without having to worry about finances. I made the right circle of friends and acquaintances and the right connections. As soon as my 5 years of education were over, I found myself everything but struggling to find jobs. My situation was rather stable and my income was increasing exponentially, and my life had finally taken a path which wasn't directly brutal towards me. I was finally able to purchase a car, which was the closest thing I could get to buying my dream car at such a young age, and went to my parents' house to visit them and inform them of my recent purchases, because I expected them to be happy for me and excited about what their money had given me all those years ago and finally produced, even though that money was mine and the government granted it to me for the sole purpose of my higher education. I still felt a lot of gratitude towards them, seeing how surprised and unexpected it was for them to actually save it for me. As soon as I walked into my parents' house and pointed out the car that was parked outside, saying that it was indeed mine, with a smile on my face and a flutter in my stomach, their demeanor changed entirely from neutral to envious and enraged. Things became extremely awkward between us, and I felt myself urging towards leaving this awkward atmosphere ASAP. The following day, I got a phone call from them, telling them that they had given everything quite a lot of thought and that they had come upon the decision to make me pay for all of my money which they had the grace to give me. They wanted me to pay them back $90,000 within the following year, or else they would be ruining my life in a way that I could never even imagine. Now, I'm not sure what they meant by that, and I'm not sure if this is real, because these are my parents I'm talking about here. But whatever their intentions are, or their keeping capabilities may extend to, this is possibly one of the strangest things I will ever experience in my lifetime. I told them that I can't pay for such a large amount of money, and I shouldn't have to because the money that they gave me was mine to begin with. And they ended the conversation rather abruptly and haven't spoken to me since. Not really sure what will come up in this situation, but whatever this may be, I'll keep you guys updated. Update. I finally received the call from my parents that I have been dreading over the past couple of weeks since I last posted, and things are far more malicious and dangerous than I had expected them to be. Instead of my parents asking me to pay them the $90,000 they had given me 5 years ago, they're now amping up their requests, saying that if I don't pay them 25% of my salary each and every single month, they would make sure my career takes a dent that it will never recover from, and my reputation will be ruined for as long as I lived. If it was just a matter of he said this and she said that, I would have left them without any further contact or interactions with me. Their people and connections can't influence me because I don't intend to live in their city, and what they have to say about me won't have any influence anyways. I wouldn't have even been writing this update had they not stood up and blackmailed me so viciously. Apparently, all those years ago when they gave me the money, my mother had started a digital journal, and what she was writing was all about how I had already taken the money that the government had saved up for me and was stealing from their own personal finances to provide for my bad spending habits and outrageous lifestyle. What she was insinuating was that if I refused being the 25% of my hard-earned salary, they would go up to the police or whatever authority they feel like it and tell them that I had not only taken out all the money that I was supposed to pay for my tuition as well, but that I had also stolen another $90,000 to be able to go to college and pay for education. And not only that, they promised to get the media involved and publicize this as much as humanly possible to influence my career wherever I chose to start it. I'm really uncertain as to what I should do about this because these are my parents we're talking about here. It's not like I can just disappear off the face of the earth and pretend to not know them. These days, my parents are plotting against me as if they have absolutely nothing to do with me. And I'm not the daughter they chose to bring into this world, doomed to be their own. They're a large circle of connections, and the people they had hosted, although they are people of varying positions in society, seeing that my parents are willing to blackmail me like this, I wouldn't put it above them if they used up the max of their connections to actually ruin me. I really am unsure as to what I should do about this, and if I should accept their offer or not, but one thing's for sure, had I known that things would lead up to this 5 years ago, I wouldn't have taken a single penny from the money they offered, which belonged to me in the first place. Next story. So we just had a baby. He's not even 2 weeks old yet. And I've been having my mother come over to help me with the 2-year-old. My mother does not live with us. She lives in her own apartment, but doesn't have a vehicle, so when I need help, I have to pick her up and take her home. In addition to the 2 kiddos, I live with my boyfriend, his mother, and a friend who rents out the guest house. Now, my mom was over the other day, and right when I was going to walk out the door to take her home, the new baby woke up. I made him a bottle and had my boyfriend feed him, but told him that I would come right back to breastfeed him, as it was getting late and I needed to take my mom home. I drop my mom off and return home to see the bottle is still half full on the table and my mother-in-law holding the new baby and sitting next to my boyfriend. I walk in and say hi, then walk over to my mother-in-law to get my son to breastfeed him. As soon as I put my hands out to receive him, my mother-in-law turns away and says, "Warm your hands up first." I responded, "I'll take him." She retorts back saying, "I'm seriously warming your hands up first." Now at this point, I'm highly annoyed because I came back to feed my kid and she's obviously not doing that with the bottle I provided before I left. So I raise my voice and say, "Give me my son," to which she promptly hands him over and announces that she's going to her room. My boyfriend, who was sitting right next to his mom watching this happen, immediately turns to me and asks, "What's your problem?" I've never raised my voice to my mother-in-law before, and I immediately felt bad for doing so, as I've always tried to show the utmost respect to those older than me. However, I'm not going to let anyone tell me I can't have my son for any reason, especially if I'm trying to attend to his needs. I did apologize to my mother-in-law for raising my voice, since she is family and she helps me out as much as she can, and it was out of my nature her to do that. Even though I apologized for raising my voice, I still feel like I did the right thing by telling her to give me my son when he needed to be fed. My boyfriend thinks that it was extremely out of line and it has been causing issues since it happened. So, am I the a-hole? Not the a-hole. Start to finish, your conduct was stellar. You absolutely need to set a standard that your kids are yours. And while the apology was unnecessary in that you weren't wrong, it was wise to be diplomatic. Mother-in-law needs to consider how she would have felt with someone giving her orders about her children, and boyfriend absolutely needs to behave as a bridge in moments like those. He should have spoken up to his mom in round 2 with something to the tune of, "Hey mom, would you please respect our parental boundaries and not give the mother of my child orders about our baby? There's a 2-year-old over there as evidence that she's done this once and she doesn't need notes about details like warm hands." Not the a-hole. As a mother of 2, within myself, when I ask for my baby, I will not tolerate delays or criticism. 2 weeks after childbirth, I was hormonal. I breastfeed and was fully attuned to my baby and their needs, and my breast milk leaking was proof. I didn't need to cater to other people, and it took me a while to assert myself and stop feeling guilty about it. You should not feel guilty of their lack of sensitivity to you or your baby's needs. Not the a-hole. It's your kid. If you want him back, the only basis for saying no should be because you're about to seriously hurt the kid if you take him. Your hands being cold from the outside might be uncomfortable at most. That was a massive overreaction from mother-in-law. Next story. I, female 40, was invited to stop by and see one of my dearest friends from childhood at her mother's home yesterday evening. She lives overseas and hadn't been in the States for years, so she wanted me to stop by even though they had other family visiting her mother as well. When I got there, my friend introduced me to a couple of her cousins and their husbands. At that point, all the kids were downstairs in the playroom, but she called her son to come up so I could meet him. Her son came and shook my hand, and I remarked how handsome he was. He has deep dimples and gorgeous hazel eyes with long lashes. Right behind him was a girl about the same age with the same eyes and dimples. I said to my friend, "Oh, I didn't know you had a daughter too. You two look like twins." The room was suddenly quiet. My friend's son corrected me and said that the girl is his cousin, not his sister. My friend was shooting daggers at me with her eyes as if I'd said something terrible, and her cousin, who I'd later found out was the mother of the girl, got up and left the room looking upset. Her husband followed her. Things became so weird and awkward from that moment on. I made an excuse to leave. Only this afternoon, when my friend's younger sister called, we were also friends in school, did I found out why. So apparently, my friend had an affair with her cousin's husband when she lived with them briefly, and her son is the product of that affair. From what I just saw, she won't admit it, but everyone has suspected it because the older her son gets, the more he looks like the man. I honestly didn't notice the resemblance last night because the husband had just given me a quick wave from the far side of the room where he was watching a game. The reason the cousin, his wife, got upset and left the room is because she suspected something for years, but everyone has worked hard at convincing her she's paranoid and seeing a resemblance that's not there. So I'm the a-hole in the scenario now and ruined everyone's Christmas, or at least that's how it seems because my friend won't return any of my calls. Edited to add, the reason I made the leap to thinking the girl was my friend's daughter is she came upstairs with the son while all the other kids stayed downstairs, and she was standing behind the son as if waiting her turn to be introduced to me. Not the a-hole. You didn't know aunt cousins can look like siblings. I look like my maternal cousins who are my brothers, but that's because we all inherited my grandmother's looks while I look like my half-sister is my cousin. Genetics are wild. Not the a-hole. You didn't even know there had been an affair. You just made an innocent comment that happened to match what everyone else already knew and were trying to pretend didn't exist. This is on your friend and her cousin's husband and the rest of the family for trying to convince the cousin that she was crazy for her suspicions, that they all knew were correct. The only innocent people here were you, the cousin, and the kids. Not the a-hole. It's a pretty normal comment, and there are plenty of cousins who could pass for siblings and siblings who look nothing alike. My brother looks like our cousin but not like me. Threw people for a loop to learn he's my brother and not my cousins. Next story. I, 32 female, have played the piano since I was 7. My teacher and I were really close, and when she passed away, she left me her piano. It was a beautiful grand piano, and it really means a lot to me. I keep it in my spare room, and I'm the only one that plays it. My sister, 34 female, has 2 younger children, 5 and 6. They're nice kids, but they have a lot of energy and sometimes don't put it to the best use. She and her family are spending Christmas with me and my husband. It's a lot of people, but we make do. I made it clear that I don't want anyone playing my piano. I know a few other people at my house play the piano, and I have an upright that they can play. Today, I found my niece and nephew playing my piano with their feet. This freaked me out. I asked them to please not do that, and I explained to them that they can play the other piano with their hands if they would like to. They went to do that instead. I told my sister and I asked her to please tell her kids not to play my piano. She said she had told them but had no way to stop them, and that I should have put it in a room if I didn't want people touching it. The room is out of the way and at the end of the house, so there's no reason people would be over there. I told my sister that if I find her children playing the piano again, I'm going to ask her to leave. She said I'm jumping to an extreme and it's just a piano. Am I the a-hole? Not the a-hole. At 5 and 6, her children are old enough to understand they can't touch certain things, and definitely not to play a piano with their feet. Your sister is a guest in your home. She needs to watch and supervise her children. When I was the single aunt, I had a big basket with blocks, games, puzzles, and art supplies for the kids to play with, and I never had any problems with my nieces and nephews getting into mischief when they came to my house. Not the a-hole. Your sister can certainly control whether her kids mess with your piano or not. It's called supervision and discipline. The problem is that your sister doesn't see it as a big deal, so she isn't interested in keeping an eye on them. She doesn't respect your rules, and you're well within your rights to give them the boot. Not the a-hole. And your sister has messed up trying to argue the point when she should have just gone, "Oh no, I'm terribly sorry. I'll speak to them again about it." What I would say is forbidden fruit to kids can be tempting. I had many smacked bottoms from going near my great-grandpa's water butt, which, yes, is where it's the parents' job to keep an eye on their offspring. If you want to be proactive, you could get one of those cheap magnet alarms from Amazon and tape it on the door. That'd scare them right off.